Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing is my opinion. Let's get started.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Oh, we have a good show on Bryan Kohberger today. We have breaking news, and the judge has made another ruling, and we have a shakeup on the defense team. Is Bryan firing his attorney, or is there a plea deal in the works? We have a lot to talk about. And then as soon as we're done here, I'm going right into the Sebastian Rogers case. I did not go live with it yesterday. I was investigating some other things in relation to the case, and I'm just going to blow the lid off of what I think is really going on in that case. So let's get started. I do want to just thank you guys for joining me today. Come on in. I will need help sharing out the Sebastian Rogers information if you guys don't mind. So let's start with these body cam footage. I told you guys I was going to share these, and then we're going to talk about the new information regarding the shakeup on the defense team. Somebody got fired. Is there a plea deal? What's really going on in the defense camp? Why aren't we getting more information? And then the judge's ruling on Dylan. So let's dig into this, you guys. First of all, I do want to start with these photos. So you can see here, this is from the traffic cam stop that stopped Bryan Kohberger and Michael Kohberger when they were traveling from Pullman, Washington, and they took that big 9.5-hour detour to get to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. There was 2 traffic stops for tailgating about 8 or 9 minutes apart. You've got to wonder if Bryan was really getting suspicious about this. These 2 traffic stops. I can see one, but I don't think on the first one they got the body cam footage that they needed. And remember, Ann Taylor told us in her motions to suppress evidence, one of the things she wanted to suppress was the body search that was done on Bryan Kohberger. So did he have some marks on him, some scars that could line up with what happened at the 1122 King Road house? Now, it would have been around 6.5 weeks later, because that crime occurred on November 13th of 2022. And Bryan Kohberger wasn't arrested until the end of December in 2022. But let's look at these pictures together. Let me make sure I'm showing you what I'm looking at, and let me move myself out of the way. Okay. So you can see here, I've got a close-up on his face, and a lot of people believe there is a bruise on his cheek where I've got it circled. I'm not going to play the video. I'm just going to show you what I see. Okay, then we've got the wrists, and I enhanced these photos. Okay, so there's one. So there's something on his body that Ann Taylor wants suppressed. She does not want the jury to see that. So is it these enhanced photos? Is it that wrist scarring that is, maybe I was able to enhance it, I mean, remember, this is body cam footage that I'm having to enhance, but did she feel like that, maybe that was when it was done in person and photographed up close with a good camera. Was this maybe looked to Ann Taylor and the prosecution like there was some kind of a knife incident with his wrist? Because that clearly looks like an injury, in my opinion, but you let me know what you think about this. So I just wanted to show you guys those. And then let's dig into all of this new information. So come on in. Let me just put myself on the side. I think I'll just keep myself on the side. Okay. So let's dig into this new information. And I have a huge show planned. I planned it out yesterday, and then we had the breaking news on top of that. So this just got longer and longer. I hope I can get through everything. I have like, I don't know, 10 pages of stuff I need to get through. Okay, so we'll go through this, but it is really important. Okay, so we're going to be talking about BK's hands and wrists, which I just did. The marks on his face, we just did that. The major defense team shakeup and the judge's latest ruling on roommate Dylan. How is Ann Taylor going to handle Dylan? And I'm going to show you BK's connections to Maddie and Kaylee. So let's go start with the breaking news of the defense team shakeup. Did Bryan Kohberger fire his lawyer? And then we're going to talk about the judge's ruling on Dylan and how this is going to affect the case. Okay, so let me go here. Make sure we're all looking at the same thing. Yep, okay. So come on in, guys. The defense team for the Moscow college student suspect Bryan Kohberger is undergoing a shakeup. So my sourcing on this is the Idaho Statesman. They are a very good newspaper. They've been very accurate. So get this, Jay Logsdon. Now he's the North Idaho State Public Defender, and he's the co-counsel with Ann Taylor. Now he's being replaced for Bryan Kohberger's capital case. So I don't think he would have voluntarily been taken off the case. I think something happened and he has been removed. So either we have a plea deal that's about to happen and he's moving on to something else, or he got fired by Bryan Kohberger. I don't think Ann Taylor would have let him go. But okay, so taking his spot is a Northern California lawyer who specializes in DNA and previously testified as a paid consultant for the defense. So Becca Barlow is a formerly from the San Francisco Public Defender's Office, and she's joining the trio of lawyers defending Bryan Kohberger. And he is innocent until proven guilty, but I do have to talk about this case in terms of him because all of the motions and the news and the potential plea deals and all of that is related to Bryan Kohberger. Okay, so she's run a private law office with a focus that involves forensic DNA evidence, according to her website. So this makes me wonder if there's more than just the knife sheath DNA, because Ann Taylor would have known about the knife sheath, or is it because when she tried to have the IgG, maybe she thought she could get it thrown out? Maybe Ann Taylor thought she could get the IgG thrown out when she realized she couldn't. Maybe Bryan Kohberger was frustrated and got mad. I don't know, but let's listen, because get this. No reason was listed. I think this is weird too. No reason was listed for the attorney substitution on the case. And again, I just don't think an attorney would voluntarily walk away from a huge, high-profile case like this unless either A, there's a plea deal about to be made and this attorney has moved on. And I told you I thought that was potentially a possibility when we found out that Ann Taylor had agreed for the prosecution to see Bryan Kohberger's. She agreed to release the gag order on Bryan Kohberger's mental and physical health records. And we felt like at the time, I shared with you that I thought this might be in relation to mitigation. So has this attorney moved on voluntarily, or was he fired, or is there something else going on and he's just moving on? They don't want to say, and they're negotiating out for a plea deal. So because no reason was listed for the attorney substitution. So Patrick Orr, he's the spokesperson for the Idaho State Public Defender's Office. This is where Logsdon is employed, declined to comment on the move. Again, I don't think Logsdon would have voluntarily left the case. He cited the gag order in the Kohberger case, and attorneys on both sides aren't allowed to speak about the case outside of the court with our judge, who we are, because it sounds too much like a 1938 a guy who started a world war. We're just going to say Judge Hip, okay? So we know that let's finish this and then we're going to dig into what we know. A leather sheath for the fixed blade was located next to Maddie. It was underneath and to the side of Maddie. And state investigators went on to discover DNA on the sheath, which after analysis that included FBI assistance later came back as a statistical match to Bryan Kohberger. This is according to police and the prosecution. Logsdon, who has been Bryan Kohberger's number 2 public defender for 2 years, will be retained in the case as a consulting attorney. It just makes me wonder what is really going on here. And lead defense attorney Ann Taylor said in the same filing that requested to add Barlow that BK's legal team also included Alyssa Matsoth, who will remain, while Logsdon, quote, will not participate as trial counsel. This is according to Ann Taylor. So what is going on? What is really going on? So in August of 2023, you guys might remember, Barlow was a defense witness at a court hearing over the state's effort to limit some of the records related to the FBI's use of the case in the IgG, the investigative genetic genealogy DNA. So the judge ruled against Ann Taylor. The IgG does, he ruled 4 motions that I went over on the last live stream, so I'm not going to rehash that. But she lost, and there's another ruling that we're going to cover in just a second from Judge Hipp. We're going to just call him Judge Hipp. The prosecutor objected to Barlow's testimony as improper and a veiled attempt to include the legal conclusions of an attorney not affiliated with the case. The prior judge, so that would be Judge John Judge, declined to keep her from the stand and later awarded the DNA records to the defense. So Ann Taylor got what she wanted. He gave her, Judge John Judge gave her the DNA records. And Barlow was also present last month in the courtroom for hearings over the defense push to suppress a variety of evidence. So there is evidence in this case. For those of you that come into my comment section telling me there's no evidence, do my research. Guys, Ann Taylor is filing motions to suppress the evidence. Remember, if it's bad for BK, Ann Taylor wants to keep it out. She wants to suppress that evidence. So Ada County Judge Hipp, now overseeing the closely watched case earlier this week, denied each of those requests to exclude any of the items seized from Kohberger through the search warrants and during his arrest. So it was a clean sweep when we did our last live stream with this judge. So this is Bicka Barlow. This is her picture that I'm sharing with you now. Just make sure we're all looking at the same thing and that I do not have myself in the way. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So this is Bicka Barlow. And she is, as I shared, based in San Francisco. So time to pivot and focus on the trial. The timing of the defense attorney swap, which is about 5 months ahead of the trial, does not come as a shock, according to Joshua Ritter. Now, he's a criminal defense attorney in LA. Instead, the action represents the defense fine-tuning who will be in court, who will be the in-court attorneys. So this is what he told the Idaho Statesman. He said, quote, "To me, it's a swift battle strategy change. They realized," he's saying, talking about the defense team here, "this in front of getting the DNA kicked out from a legal standpoint has now been foreclosed," which means the judge ruled that she's not, that the DNA isn't going anywhere. And now it's time to pivot and focus on the trial. And in doing so, they need to reorganize their trial team. And I've shared with you in the past that I believe that juries love DNA, and this being matching Bryan, not million, not billion, but octillion, almost more than anybody, than we have people on the planet. And this is from the cheek swab, not the IgG. But I told you I thought this was going to be, devastating for Ann Taylor to have to overcome. And that's why she was working really hard. She did a great job, too, of trying to get this thrown out. But the judge said no. So Barlow's has an established legal practice of DNA, and IgG makes her a logical choice for Bryan Kohberger's defense team. And then this is from the Boise criminal defense attorney, that Edwina Elcox. And I think she's the one that's always sitting there smiling next to Bryan at the defense table. Quote, or maybe I'm wrong. The heart of the prosecution is also the antithesis of the defense, she said. And that's, how do you explain this DNA? Okay, so this is not going to be, this is not the defense attorney that I'm thinking about. She said, how do you explain that his DNA was there on this knife sheath? So absolutely bringing in someone to defend against this critical piece of evidence makes sense. So we also have a shakeup on the prosecution side. So everybody's getting ready. The prosecution, which was being led by Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson, also is in the middle of switching out a member of his team in the high-profile case. And remember, no attorney is going to voluntarily agree to not want to be on this team. This is the biggest trial since probably, I don't know, maybe the OJ trial. I can't think of a trial that's had, that's going to have as much attention as this one. Late last year, Bill Thompson filed a request, which the judge granted, to replace Prosecutor Ingrid Beatty, a special assistant attorney general assigned to the case. In January, Beatty left the Idaho Attorney General's office. Okay, so she just left the office to join the Canyon County Prosecutor's office, according to her LinkedIn profile. Okay, so big shakeup. And I'm trying to remember the name of this attorney. I was thinking that was Edwina Cox, but that is not. So the defense addition of a lawyer well-versed in DNA evidence is likely of greater consequence. And he compared it to when attorney Barry Scheck, now this is going back to the O.J. Simpson trial, Barry Scheck, a DNA expert, joined O.J. Simpson's high-powered defense team, the Dream Team, for his 1995 double M, I'm watching my words in case you have little ones in the room, trial in Los Angeles. The DNA evidence was still in its infancy at that time, and Barry Scheck played a crucial role in getting O.J. Simpson acquitted. So will this new attorney be able to get Bryan Kohberger acquitted? Now, I'm not so sure. I think they have, and I'm going to go off of what this, attorney says, but Bryan Kohberger's attorneys have their work cut out from them now that the judge has ruled that the knife sheath DNA said to be belonging to BK. And remember, the IGG isn't what's coming into the trial, at least from the prosecution. The defense sounds like they're bringing it in, but the prosecution is just going to bring in the cheek swab. At least that's what they've said, which they got with a warrant. A judge signed off on it when he was under arrest, and that's what matched that knife sheath DNA, whereas the IGG matched to a family member, Michael Kohberger, and that was taken out of the trash. So I just don't want to conflate those two. So the DNA is said to be the defendants will be included at trial, but with her addition, Barlow can be expected to lead arguments about the case's key piece of evidence to convince jurors that the crime scene DNA may not be what it seems, just as Barry Scheck did for O.J. Simpson. And then he said this, quote, they, and he's talking about the defense team, have a hell of a job ahead of them because a lot of things have changed over the last 30 years. So this is getting really interesting, you guys. Let me pull up. We have so much stuff to get into. I do want to say hello to chat. And let's see, we have, and then after this, I'm going to dig into the Sebastian Rogers case big time, and what I feel like. I'll tell you when we get over there. Okay, so we're going to talk about the judge's ruling regarding Dylan. But Ann Taylor, and some of you guys want to know too how law enforcement found Bryan Kohberger. So I'm just going to briefly summarize, and then we're going to talk about Dylan. So, and what she's, what the judge has ruled, and also how Ann Taylor can overcome and try to mitigate any damage that Dylan does. And how do you handle somebody? Ann Taylor was trying to get her excluded from the trial because she had been drinking. So we're going to talk about that. So Ann Taylor wanted to know how Bryan Kohberger's name got on law enforcement's lips. So we're just going to quickly go through what happened. And then we're going to talk about this new ruling regarding Dylan Mortensen. So the first thing that the law enforcement did was they put out a bolo, be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. They got the years incorrect initially, but updated it later on. And they knew that it was a Hyundai Elantra because they had the video of this Hyundai Elantra circling the house 1, 2, 3 times. So they were probably able to get also security footage, I believe, of the car, not just pinging phones, but I think this will be lined up with camera footage that shows that this Hyundai Elantra going to the crime scene. Then the cell phone gets switched off. We have the camera footage of the car circling the crime scene and then going back up to Pullman, Washington. So law enforcement let's talk about Dylan. Okay, so law enforcement had the description of Dylan of a man that was 6 feet tall or taller, with bushy eyebrows, dressed in all black, who was athletic but not muscular, right? So what they did was they looked to see who owned a Hyundai Elantra, and if it was like a blonde female, then they knew that did not match Dylan's description. So she did help law enforcement narrow the search down. They knew they were looking for a man that was she also told them, this came out in the hearings, that he was white. So they knew they were looking for a white male, 6 feet or taller, with bushy eyebrows. Ann Taylor was also making, she was also making a lot of brouhaha that Dylan wasn't able to identify Bryan in like a photograph lineup that they gave her, not a person lineup, but photographs. And the judge said no, because he had a mask on. Of course, she wouldn't be able to identify him. So she did lose that ruling to keep Dylan from testifying. She tried to keep Dylan off the stand. Ann Taylor did lose that. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. Let me grab a sip of water. Okay, so according to Fox News, I can't show you Fox News because I don't know if it would be considered it, because I subscribe to them, but I don't have my, I don't know if I can show their articles on my channel. It's not like publicly available. It's subscription only. So, but I'm just going to quote exactly what they said, and you guys can subscribe and look it up yourself. A surviving housemate of the 4 Idaho students done away with, I'm watching my words here, in a home invasion, told the detective she saw a bushy-eyed intruder walking out the back door with a vacuum type object in his hand. Now, I don't think she saw a vacuum. I think she saw him carrying a bag. I told you I thought that he had a bag, and that he would have gone to those patio doors. Allegedly, Bryan is innocent until proven guilty, but the perpetrator, the man that Dylan saw, went to those patio doors and then took off his monkey suit, dropped it into a bag, along with booties and anything else that could be carrying DNA into his vehicle, his Hyundai Elantra. So she interpreted that as a vacuum type object in his hands. And so this is in newly unveiled court documents. So the revelation came in Judge Hipp's denial. So Ann Taylor lost this motion of 30-year-old suspect. He's 30 years old now. Motion for a Franks hearing, a rare legal proceeding in which the defendant has a chance to attack the warrants in court before a trial. So now Dylan admitted in this hearing, so we have some new documents that are coming into light on this, that her memory was, quote, fuzzy and cloudy. So this is according to the court documents. She said everything was kind of blurry, like I don't fully remember it, I would say. Other evidence, however, corroborated Dylan's timeline and the suspect's description. So this was the judge's ruling. So he decided that her confusion and not being able to exactly identify Bryan Kohberger out of a lineup would not mean that she could not testify. He is allowing her testimony to come in because he said the perpetrator was wearing a mask. Of course, she wouldn't be able to pick him out of a lineup. So that's the 5th ruling that Ann Taylor has lost. It's just been so far a clean sweep for the prosecution. So he ruled that this did not impact probable cause. So Ann Taylor was just trying to get anything thrown out to rule out probable cause so she could get the other evidence, the car searched, the Pullman apartment searched, the office of Bryan Kohberger searched, his parents all Brightsville, Pennsylvania. So she wanted to try to get something to impact probable cause. The judge said, no, this does not impact probable cause. The fact that she was drinking doesn't impact probable cause. And the fact that he was masked, of course, she couldn't identify him. So we're going to talk about how Ann Taylor will probably go after Dylan in just a moment. But it's also been reported that and I'm going to show you connections that Bryan Kohberger had to the victims. I told you stalking is very narrow definition in Idaho. The statute says that the victims have to be aware of, they have to feel intimidated or threatened or in fear of the perpetrator for it to be considered stalking in Idaho. Now, I don't believe that the victims even knew Bryan Kohberger existed, in my opinion. We'll find out more at the trial. So it's been reported that a police officer, a WSU campus police officer, ran the plates of the Hyundai Elantra that was seen circling the 1122 King Road house right before these crimes were committed. And we have a tight timeline because of the DoorDash delivery, right? And this police officer also reportedly, again, this is WSU campus police, ran the plates and pulled up a picture of Bryan Kohberger. And he felt like Bryan Kohberger fit the description that Dylan gave. So I do believe, at least from most females' standpoints, maybe not all of us, but I do believe that his eyebrows do look bushy. And obviously the police agreed. So he did fit the description. He was white, he was male, he was around 6 feet tall, he was athletic but not muscular, and he had bushy eyebrows. So we're going to talk about how Ann Taylor is going to go after Dylan in just a second, but I think another thing in that in the traffic stop where I just showed you I think he was stopped to try to get close-ups of potentially a bruise on his cheek and some little cuts on his wrist. Now, Ann Taylor is trying to suppress a body search of Bryan Kohberger. So I also think that the jury, when they see that body cam footage and the police officer asks them where they're going, and Michael Kohberger says they're going to, their house, and Bryan Kohberger says they're going for Thai food. Again, in and of itself, it's nothing, but I just think it's going to be one more little piece in the puzzle for the prosecution. So, and then we've got this bizarre 9-hour detour that we still don't have any answers for of why they took this detour. I don't think Bryan Kohberger is going to take the stand, but you never know. Alex Murdaugh took the stand, and we didn't think he was going to. So when law enforcement began surveilling Bryan Kohberger, they reportedly saw him meticulously cleaning his car. They also saw him taking his trash to his parents, from taking his trash and putting his own personal trash in neighbors' trash cans. Now, once you throw your trash in the garbage, it's considered abandoned and law enforcement can get it. So this may be why law enforcement was able to get the garbage from the house where Bryan was visiting his parents in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. They got his dad's DNA off the trash, confirmed that the perpetrator was a child of Michael Kohberger. So that's how they ended up getting Bryan, how they got him. So let's talk about Dylan. As you know, the hearings that Dylan gave at least 3 interviews. There was multiple interviews, and it sounds more like it was an interrogation, initially at least, than just an interview. And she admits that her memory was fuzzy that night because she had been drinking. So this would also explain maybe a lack of judgment of maybe where you would have called police if you had seen a strange male, even though it was a party house with a lot of single girls, and why she didn't. But we don't get to pick our witnesses. And the prosecution doesn't get to pick their witnesses, and the defense doesn't get to pick their witnesses unless they are like a specialist in a certain area. But eyewitnesses, you just have who you have. And the same thing with victims. You don't get to pick your victim. You don't get to pick your perpetrator. You just have who you have. So Dylan was the youngest roommate. She had 3 interviews reportedly with police. And then I'm going to show you Bryan Kohberger's connections to the victims. She had 3 interviews. So it sounds like law enforcement was working from the inside out. And I think Dylan and Bethany, because they survived, would have been initially prime suspects. So let's, the judge, let me go back here. Okay, so once law enforcement had the DNA from the knife sheath, I already told you they uploaded it to CODIS. So the judge did rule on Dylan and how the drinking, she was, probably somewhat drunk. I think probably everybody in the house maybe probably was, allegedly. Um, and I think this is how it's going to affect the defense team. So let's talk about um how I think this is going to affect the defense team. So how is the defense going to handle this, and how is the prosecution going to handle this, Dylan, who was drinking and maybe drunk at the time that they're testifying? So the prosecution is going to do everything they can to protect Dylan's credibility by first assessing her level of intoxication, presenting evidence that supports their testimony despite the intoxication. They're going to address the potential concerns of Dylan's memory during a direct examination, and they're going to prepare her in advance to counter defense arguments. And the prosecution will also be countering these that attempt to discredit Dylan based on alcohol consumption. Now, in some cases, a prosecution may decide they're not going to call this witness. In this case, I think they just need the general description from her. So it does sound like they're going to call her. Now, if they don't call her, the defense team, I think, may call her, although Ann Taylor tried to get her whole testimony thrown out. So maybe I'm wrong. So, how can Ann Taylor overcome Dylan's testimony and the bushy eyebrows? Well, she's going to ask Dylan about the alcohol consumption. How much did you drink that night? What time did you stop drinking? Were you feeling the effects of alcohol at the time that you saw my client? Isn't it true that alcohol can impair your memory? Can you describe in detail what you remember from that night, including specific conversations and actions? Do you have any blackouts or gaps in your memory from that evening? So she's going to be pointing out inconsistencies. She might say something like, earlier you said you saw this happen, but now you're not sure. You told the police this, but later you said you're not sure. You said and she did tell law enforcement that her memory was fuzzy. And then Ann Taylor's going to probably follow up with, is this because of the alcohol you consumed? Compare your testimony today to what you told law enforcement in your statement. And are there any differences? And could that be due to your drinking alcohol? So she's also going to go after Dylan's perception of the details. She's going to say, when you saw this incident, it was dark, right? And you were drinking, right? Do you think that the alcohol could have affected your ability to accurately judge distances or time frames? And then she might use some leading questions too. You were pretty intoxicated that night, weren't you? You were probably not thinking clearly because of how much you had to drink. And then we have the texting that went on between Dylan and Bethany. Now, we don't know what they were saying to each other. We know that Dylan closed the door and locked herself in her room. And I don't think it's a huge deal that the roommates were texting. If it's something along the lines of they were annoyed, they were frustrated, like, why is it always so noisy? Gosh, there's another guy in the house. Who's so-and-so having over now? Remember, Ethan was spending the night too. So, it wasn't, against the rules in this party house for these young women to have a man spend the night. So we're going to see the text messages at trial. And I think this is going to, give us help fill in the gaps. But with the gag order in place, we've had some crazy speculation on this case. So is there going to be a plea deal? Let's talk about it. Let me say hello to chat, though. I feel really bad. I've been talking and I haven't come in to say hello. This is our head mod. This is NJS. Thank you to all of our mods, channel members, and subscribers. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room and you like to have all the news, and I'm going to show you guys proof that Bryan Kohberger did have connections to the victims, even though he wasn't technically stalking them. He was watching them, surveilling them, whatever words you want to use. Hey, Adriana. And then after this, I'm going to be doing a live stream on the Sebastian Rogers case. I'm going to be exposing some things. Hey, Veronica. Pepper's here. Come on in, guys. Just want to say hello to chat. I do want, come on up and talk to me. I do want to, Mike's here. Michelle's here. Kimmy's here. Las Vegas girl is here. I do want to take your questions. Pepper's here, Vet Girl's here. So come on up and talk to me. Bring me your questions. Jody said, hello. I haven't had a notification in a long time. I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad you're here too. Consider re-hitting the notification bell. Hi, Sue Joy. Happy Saturday to you also. No plea deal, Adriana thinks. I don't know. I don't know. Jen thinks definitely a plea deal is coming. I think something's in the works. I think something's in the works. That's just how he looks, though. I mean, it is, that's just how he looks. He has I think, in my opinion, almost like a predator type of look where he's, got a lot of tension in his mouth, and then his eyes are just darting around. And I think, it is kind of scary. And I think Ann Taylor was aware of it too, which is why we don't have a close up on Bryan Kohberger for the trial. We're like back, looking back here, we can't really make out his facial expression. And then she's probably been told to keep it neutral. Thank you so much, Brother Mike, for your super sticker. Thank you so much. I'll put it toward the computer. I started shopping for a new computer last night. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. So let me see. Pen Jam is here. Well, I do want to see if you guys have any questions. Adrian says this prosecutor is known for offering deals. Yeah, I'm wondering if there is some kind of negotiation going on behind the scenes. Just because I do think it's interesting that they decided to release Bryan's physical and mental health records. Those would be protected by HIPAA. So Ann Taylor did not have to release those. She chose to, which makes me wonder if, she would have maybe been trying to get a plea deal. Now, I don't know if Bryan Kohberger would have agreed to a plea deal or not. I don't know if the victims' families would have agreed to a plea deal or not. But I'm going to show you Bryan Kohberger's links to the victims in just a second. Let me just be social. This is interactive. I keep getting kicked offline. Oh, no. I had connection issues all day on my last live stream. I kept losing connection. So I'm glad we have a good connection today. And hopefully Lene, is it Lene? Hopefully it'll be okay. They may not use Dylan Mortensen. Her recall is shaky. Keeps telling different versions. Well, I think Ann Taylor tried to get her testimony to be suppressed. Now, I don't know if she just wanted the statements to law enforcement and, but I think they might call her, even though she is shaky and we've got, but if the prosecution doesn't call her, do you think the defense team will? Dylan Mortensen actually very consistent, according to the judge. Thank you for that, Las Vegas girl. I think what his feeling was that, of course, she didn't see Bryan Kohberger's or the perpetrators. I shouldn't say that because he's innocent until proven guilty. Of course, she didn't see his face. He had a mask on. So she would have just seen, the eyes. But I do think, those eyebrows, I'm sure they're like, trimmed up some now, but I do think that a lot of people, especially females, might see those as being like kind of bushy eyebrows. If you look at mine, I think I have fairly thick eyebrows, but they're not, you could just see the difference. So I think from a female's point of view, you can understand that. Kimmy said his strange, obscure case law ideas were garbage. Las Vegas girl says he stated that in the denial to Ann Taylor. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, please give us a thumbs up and let YouTube know this is a G-rated show. Veronica says Ann Taylor wants a new lawyer there for the trial. Because she's very well-rounded in DNA and she's hoping that will help. I think you're right, Veronica. I think you're absolutely right. And she's got the ones here. I was able to see it. Yeah, but I don't think Logston would have left. I think Michelle voluntarily. So Logston's going to be in consulting, but I'm wondering if if Bryan Kohberger let him go. Michelle said she agrees she will need help at best in combating the state regarding the touch DNA. Well, the touch DNA for the prosecution, they're not bringing that in. Oh wait, they are bringing in the touch DNA. They're not bringing in the IgG DNA. They're going to bring in the touch DNA and the cheek swab DNA. Now, I think Ann Taylor sounds like she's going to be bringing in the IgG DNA. And we saw her trying to conflate it with Judge Hipp. For those of you just joining us, I know his full name, but it comes out. The algorithm picks it up as being like a 1938, 1940s dictator who started a war. So I'm going to say Judge Hipp. Okay. That's what we decided in the last live stream. Las Vegas girl said Ann Taylor probably wanted him removed for someone she works better with and who has a stronger presence in the courtroom. Yeah, could be. Thank you so much, Njaz. And our other head mod is my brother Mike. I don't know. I showed him a few minutes ago. There's brother Mike. He's our other head mod, brother Mike. And then I thank you to all of our mods. If you see people with wrenches, those are our mods. Las Vegas girl said, absolutely, she wants it suppressed. I hope it's allowed in. And she got denied. She tried to suppress the IgG. She tried to suppress Dylan's testimony and her statements to law enforcement, but it was all denied because Ann Taylor was trying to get rid of probable cause, which is why the reason that the judge issued those warrants for Bryan Kohberger's search of the car, the Hyundai Elantra, his parents' house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. And I already did a whole live stream, so I'm not going to rehash it here, on what I believe the evidence was found and what that might mean for the prosecution and the defense. So yeah, the judge ruled against her, and Ann Taylor also wanted a Frank's hearing, and she lost that motion as well. It will be interesting, and Jazz, you're right. Adriana doesn't think they're going to use Dylan. Her recall is shaky. I don't know. I think if they don't use her, the defense team will. I think she's going to testify. All right. Florence is here. Las Vegas girl says it was the snap on the inside. Yeah. The knife sheath was found underneath and to the side of Maddie. So, and we know the victims were done away with a knife. And then Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found inside the snap of the knife sheath. Now, I've heard people say there was any kind of blood or anything like that on the knife sheath. We don't know that yet. So we don't know if there was or there wasn't. So, but I think, the fact that he owns a Hyundai Elantra, the car was circling. And I told you, I thought that there was going to be geofencing involved. So, hey, Florence. Michelle says, Anthony Rome, I thought, read the closed hearing regarding the knife sheath DNA, and it was on the inside top button snap as opposed to the outside. That's correct. It was on the inside of the snap, located underneath and to the side of Maddie. Veronica says, we don't know a lot of the evidence. They're not releasing it. Exactly. We just know that there is evidence. There is evidence. People have been telling me this whole time, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. And Ann Taylor filed 13 motions to suppress evidence. Remember, if it's good for Bryan, she wouldn't be trying to keep it out. She wouldn't be trying to suppress it. She would let it in. So there is evidence. We just don't know what it is yet. But I made some really educated speculation as to what I thought it was. DE said, I feel like Ann Taylor messed up. She should have been trying to explain away the possibilities for evidence, not trying to get evidence thrown out. Well, she doesn't have her jury yet. So I think she's doing a good job. I think she, is throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. DE says, I knew it wasn't going to get thrown out. Based on other cases, she wasted time. Well, stalling helps the defense team too, right? Thank you, Njaz. And Njaz gifted a reporter room membership. Oh my gosh, if you got that, let me know. Thank you so much, Njaz. Njaz has been gifting memberships this, like, on every live stream or every other live stream, a lot. So yeah, if you're in the top chat, you can get a chance and we have regular reporter room live streams together where we do Q&As and we talk to each other. It's a really nice group of people. And thank you so much, Njaz, for the $10 super sticker. All right, I want to go into the connections to the victims. Dan says he's not guilty. No proof he was there. Why the other blood evidence not sent for the DNA? Okay, so I already covered this, but I'll answer it again, Dan, because I do appreciate that you took time out of your day to come up and talk to me and ask your questions. He's innocent until proven guilty. There's no proof he was there. Well, I'm going to say there's no proof that he was there yet. We haven't seen any of the evidence. We haven't seen the evidence. So the idea that there's no evidence, Ann Taylor filed 13 motions to suppress evidence. So there is going to be some proof. Okay, what else? Why was the other blood evidence not sent for DNA? So I covered this in a prior live stream, but I'll say it again. So in the 1990s, the law enforcement did upload it to CODIS. That's how come we know it's male DNA. But you cannot just go on unless you can somehow link. There has to be some kind of probable cause to get a warrant to just search people's DNA. And this is according to a law in the 1990s. And I went through it not on the last live stream, but the one before that. So if you go back 2 live streams, I show you the law and we dig into that more. And then his car and phone were not in the city. So how are the police covering for us? Well, his car, Ann Taylor slipped up and said it was Bryan Kohberger's car in the hearing, and I made a video about that. But and the phone, I think that's why she doesn't want the evidence that was either taken from his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania house or the car. I believe it does contain his cell phone. So I do think there is evidence, but we'll have to wait until the trial. But the idea that there's no evidence, Ann Taylor would not have filed 13 motions. That's our defense attorney. And thank you so much for taking time to share your thoughts on this and answer this, because I get these questions all the time in the comment section. So I do appreciate them. So Ann Taylor would not have filed 13 motions to suppress the evidence if there was no evidence in this trial. She wouldn't be trying to suppress the IgG DNA if it wasn't a problem. I don't think she would have just replaced the attorney on the case with another lawyer that specializes in DNA if she didn't see the DNA as a problem. Now, all the DNA we know about so far is on the inside snap of the knife sheath. We don't know. Now, Ann Taylor said there was no DNA in his car. She didn't say there was no evidence in his car. And we know there's something because she's trying to suppress whatever law enforcement got out of Bryan Kohberger's car, whatever law enforcement got out of Bryan Kohberger's apartment, whatever law enforcement got out of Bryan Kohberger's Albrightsville, Pennsylvania house. And we know at his parents' house, and to me, this is almost as devastating as the DNA, in my opinion, is that there was reportedly an ID found inside a glove, inside a box. That's how it was listed on the affidavit. But when the case was early, there was multiple leakage that the ID to the press before the judge imposed a gag order to protect Bryan Kohberger's right to a fair trial. There was multiple leaking that the ID matched one of the victims. So if that ID matches to Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, Bethany, or Dylan, it's going to be really hard for Bryan Kohberger's defense team to explain how an ID belonging to one of these victims ended up from Moscow, Idaho, all the way in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, inside Bryan Kohberger's house. There's something that they found in the house that Ann Taylor doesn't want them to see. So there was evidence suppressed. So I'm going to show you proof of Bryan Kohberger's connections. Let me just take this down, though. We're not ending. We're not done. We have a bunch of stuff, but I just do want to say thank you to our producers, NJazz, Sasha Angel, Mikey M, George Brown, and Pepper. And thank you to all our channel members for allowing me to cover this case. If you would like to have your name appear like this and have a check mark, verified check mark next to your name at all of our live streams and premieres of videos, just hit the join button. It's right next to the subscribe button. And I also want to do a super thanks coffee gratitude for last week. Thank you so much, everybody. That should be everybody, and gifted channel memberships to NJazz and 6 Cents Amelia. Okay, so let's go back. All right, let's keep going. Let me move myself out of the way so I can show you guys this. All right, so we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's connections to the victims. Okay, so let's make sure we're all looking at the same thing. All right, so this is my sourcing. I have multiple sources I'm going to show you, and there's even more sources beyond what I'm showing you. But how did Bryan Kohberger know his victims? And this is the iconic photo that I've told you that Kaylee posted on Instagram in the hours before she was done away with. This iconic photo of all of them. So whoever was following them on Instagram would have known that Kaylee was home. Was that a motivation for it to be that night, November 13th? So an investigator familiar with the Idaho case told people that Bryan Kohberger allegedly sent a series of messages to one of the victims via Instagram in late October of 2022. Quote, he slid into one of the girl's DMs several times, but she didn't respond, the source told the outlet. Basically, this is the quote, basically, it was just him, that's Bryan Kohberger, saying, hey, how are you? But he did it again and again. Now remember, obsessive compulsive disorder will be a double-edged sword for Ann Taylor. On one hand, she can use it to explain why Bryan Kohberger was wearing medical grade gloves in his parents' kitchen, separating out his trash from his parents' trash and putting his own trash in Ziploc bags. She can use that to explain the medical grade gloves, but it's going to also have a double edge because the prosecution can use the obsessive compulsive disorder as a way to just prove that he would have become obsessed with one of the victims, or maybe more than one. So this is the Sun, but it's multiple news outlets that have reported this. Basically, it was just him saying, hey, how are you? But he did it again and again. Quote, she may not have seen them because they went into message requests, said the investigation source. And a lot of people don't read their DMs. I don't. Unless I'm like told I DM'd you on Twitter, please read the DM. I don't generally read them. Let me know in the comment section. Do you read your DMs? And quote, we're still trying to determine how aware the victims were of his existence. So stalking statute in Idaho says that it cannot be stalking if the victims were not aware of, they have to feel harassed or bothered or threatened by the person for it to be considered stalking under the statute in Idaho. So sounds like, back when this was leaked to the press, we're still trying to determine how aware the victims were of his existence. And in my opinion, I don't think the victims even knew he existed. There is no indication that he was getting frustrated with her lack of response, the source added, but he was definitely persistent. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is people. Bryan Kohberger repeatedly messaged one of the victims online. Now remember, Ann Taylor claimed that Bryan Kohberger didn't have connections to the victims, but when did she claim this? When did she claim this? She claimed this a while ago, right? It wasn't recently. Ann Taylor claimed this before she had a chance to go through all of the data. I have not heard Ann Taylor claiming he doesn't have connections to the victims now. So I think she said it early on. It got headlines everywhere, but this was early on. So this article is back. This is back from January of 2023. And this is the quote, he slid into one of the girl's DMs several times, but she didn't respond. The source told people, quote, basically it was just him saying, hey, how are you? But he did it again and again. Now, we've also heard from Christy and Steve Goncalves that Bryan Kohberger was following Maddie and Kaylee on Instagram and that he was liking or hearting all of Maddie's photos. He would like. So I think that's interesting as well. So it's unclear. This is the source. It's unclear why Bryan Kohberger didn't get a response to his DM. These were DM messages, his messages, but authorities say the victim may have missed them completely. Yeah, most females don't read their DMs or their PMs, depending on what platform you're on. Quote, she may not have seen them because they went into message requests, said the investigation source. Instagram users are not notified when they receive a message from someone they do not follow back. And we know from Christy and Steve that he was following them, but they were not following them. When they receive a message from someone they do not follow back and the messages go into a special folder, quote, we're still trying to determine how aware the victims were of his existence. And again, I don't think they knew he existed. There's no indication that he was getting frustrated with her lack of response, but he was definitely persistent. Okay, let's go to the next one. Make sure we're all looking at the same thing and that I'm not blocking your view. Okay. Investigators reveal new information they say ties Bryan Kohberger to the Idaho crimes. I'm watching my words. And my sourcing on this is National Public Radio, NPR. So the Idaho authorities have released the most comprehensive evidence yet tying I'm going to watch my words, the 4 university students to the suspect who was arrested last week. Now, again, BK is innocent until proven guilty. He has not been proven guilty in a court of law. I'm talking about this case because that's who the articles are talking about. That's who Ann Taylor is making motions on behalf of, and that's who's going on trial. So I hope you understand. Okay, so among the new information is the recovery of the DNA sample from a leather knife sheath. Idaho authorities charge Bryan Kohberger with the crimes. Now, what the roommate told police, we kind of went into that. How the police tracked the car, I think we went into that. How they tracked his cell phone, I've addressed that in prior videos. But I do want to go through the cell phone a little bit because I do think this is going to line up with geofencing. Ann Taylor was trying to suppress his Google searches and also his internet provider, which was the owner of the conglomerate which owns Spectrum. So I think that not only is it, and she was also trying to suppress 3 different search warrants into AT&T. Now, AT&T was Bryan Kohberger's cell phone provider. So I do think that there is something there. So I think that we've got those cell phone pings, but I don't think that's going to be it. Okay. I think we're also going to have the CCTV camera of him going to the crime scene and leaving from the crime scene where he was picked up on different traffic cams, maybe doorbell cams. But I also think there's going to be geofencing. So what geofencing is when you go into a coffee shop or you go into a restaurant or you go to the hospital, they offer you to log into their internet. Now, whether you say yes or you ignore it, it doesn't matter. Your cell phone and the server that offers you to log into their internet makes a record. It's called a handshake. It makes a record of the fact that it was offered to you. And I believe that Bryan Kohberger, if he is the perpetrator, he's innocent until proven guilty, was sitting up in that apartment complex that was located behind the 1122 King Road house. And if you watch Gray Hughes, he showed where that would have been a great vantage point to see right into Maddie's window. And so I think that while he was up there, Kaylee's Bluetooth, which is why her laptop and her Apple phone, her Apple Watch were not returned to her parents. I think Kaylee's Bluetooth would have offered Bryan Kohberger's AT&T phone a handshake. And that's why we have the Apple search warrant. And that's why we have the AT&T search warrant. I think geofencing, maybe not on the night of the crime, because I think his phone was in airplane mode or switched off, but on the 11 visits leading up to the crime. And maybe again that morning when he returned, allegedly, he's innocent until proven guilty, to the crime scene, again, the morning of the crimes. So I just do think that's worth going into. So I hope I have answered your questions. Let me see. All right, let me grab this. Okay. Let me see where we are. I do want to say thank you so much to NJAS for the 10-pound super sticker. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I will be putting it to good use. I will be putting it toward a computer. I started shopping for the computer last night because I think I'm just almost there with the computer. So I'm really excited. Mace is here. Hi, Mace. Papa's got a brand new bag. Yeah, I think that vacuum cleaner that Dylan saw was not a vacuum cleaner. She, described it as vacuum cleaner looking. I think he was carrying a bag. I don't know why, why she, in the dark, maybe it just, registered as vacuum cleaner. But I think he was carrying a bag. That's what I think he had in his hand, allegedly. DE thinks it was one of those small bags with a handle. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving this a thumbs up. Yeah, please subscribe if whether you think he's innocent or not innocent. Don't hate the messenger. I'm just bringing you all the news so you can make up your own mind. But I hope that what you can see is that this is a critical thinkers channel. And if you like to have all of the information so you can decide for yourself, I'm not telling you what to believe. You could decide for yourself what you think about this case, then you are in the right place. Mike says, crazy. I didn't know his car was in the garage and the snipers saw him before the raid. And Jess says she learned that today too. What did I miss? I missed something. Anthony says, I think Ann Taylor knew that nothing she said was going to prevent the case from going to trial. I think she used the hearings to ask questions that Bicca wanted her to ask. Oh, very interesting comment. Wow, that's very interesting. This is why I love reading your comments, you guys. I learn from you guys. I always am interested to hear what you guys have to say. Michelle said, I think the defense realizes that they need a DNA expert if they want to have a chance to win. Hence, Bicca Barlow. Very interesting. Brother Mike says, yeah, the stalking law in Idaho is crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy because it really limits what the prosecution can call stalking. And just as they were watching his every move by the sound of it, Mike. Yeah, law enforcement had him under surveillance. Donald says that they have a ninja mask as well. I heard it was a mask, but I haven't heard the type yet. So that's interesting. And Josh says it was when he was at his parents' house the night he was arrested, Pepper. But we'll see at the trial exactly. Mike says, yeah, with a mask on his eye. With a mask on, his eyes would stand out. They're dark and sunken with the brows. Yeah, with the mask, I do think his eyes would stand out. I think you're right. And definitely the eyebrows. If you have a mask covering up all of this and you don't have glasses on like I do, but you just, and then you look, and I have thick eyebrows, but I wouldn't consider those to be bushy. Whereas Bryan Kohberger, I would say they look more, in my opinion, they do look more bushy. Let me know if you think he has bushy eyebrows, yes or no, in the comment section below. Let me move myself out of the way. Okay, so Veronica says they said he was walking back and forth to the kitchen and the bedroom. He was also peeking out the window before they pulled up to the house. Then they saw the lights to the car going on and off. And yeah, they have a really tight timeline because of that DoorDash delivery. They know it was like, sometimes started around 4:04 a.m. and he was in there around 8 minutes or so. Vic Star says the traffic stop with his dad was before they had BK's name. Oh, I think the traffic stop with his dad, Michael. Oh, I think, in my opinion, they've denied it. So, this is just my opinion. So speculation warning here, but in my opinion, I think that they knew that they had Bryan Kohberger under surveillance. I think he was stopped on that traffic stop, not once, but twice for tailgating, about, 8 or 9 minutes apart. He probably was tailgating, but he had to have had like an alarm bell going off at his head about getting pulled over twice, right? But no, I think they were surveilling him, allegedly. We'll find out at the trial. But they've denied it. So, you could be wrong. You could be right, Vic Star, and I could be wrong. And it's okay if we don't agree on every case, you guys. I cover all kinds of different cases. I'm doing Gabby Petito right now, Sebastian Rogers. I covered the Delphi case. And in a year from now, there'll be something else. We're not going to agree on every case, every single point on every single case. And that's okay. You guys are absolutely, I respect your opinion and I want to hear what your opinion is, even if you don't agree with me, because I learn from you guys too. The defense will have a chance too. The roommates will be taking the stand. I think you're right. I think that if the prosecution doesn't call Dylan and Bethany, I think Ann Taylor will. BK defense should not take the stand. BK should not take the stand. Well, I don't know. Like with I thought that in the Alex Murdaugh case, and yet he did take the stand. So put a 1 in the chat if you think Bryan Kohberger will take the stand. Put a 2 in the chat if you think he will continue to stand silent like he did instead of giving a plea deal. 2 if you think he will be silent and not take the stand, which is, his right. Sue Joy says, Ann Taylor will try to poke holes in Dylan Mortensen's testimony, but has to not get overly aggressive so as not to alienate the jury, in my opinion. I agree. DE says she was desperate and throwing anything out. A lot of people feel like Ann Taylor was just throwing everything against the wall. 13 motions to suppress evidence, and none of it did stick. Thank you, Veronica. Please give this a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. If you like to have all the information so you can decide for yourself on these cases, then this is the right channel for you. Surviving roommates are already said surviving roommates already said not taking the stand. No, they don't. I don't think they can plead the fifth. They've never said they're not taking the stand. I think I've never heard them say that. Ann Taylor tried to suppress the statements that Dylan made. She was arguing not having those come in because she was trying to get the probable cause warrants, the probable cause for the warrants thrown out. And she wanted to have that Franks hearing, but the judge said, no, Dylan can testify. So I think she will. Hey, Jody. Michelle says, I hope the roommates do take the stand. I think they will. I think they're under a gag order because they are witnesses. Mike said they knew he was going to destroy evidence and he had a gun. They had to get him very quick. He already had 6 weeks head start cleaning. DE thinks the 8 hours must be explainable as Ann Taylor isn't attacking it. I think so. And I think we may, just like I told you guys on the last live stream, just like in the Elizabeth Smart case, her sister was in the same room with Elizabeth Smart and didn't report. And the abductor came in and took Elizabeth Smart out of her bed. And her sister was in the room with her. Mary Elizabeth was in the room, but Mary Elizabeth didn't report it for 6 hours. In the Jodi Arias case, Travis Alex, and we know Jodi did it. She's been found guilty, and there were photographs of her, literally doing the crime, doing away with Travis. So I think, and his roommates didn't report anything with Travis for days, not hours, days. So I don't know. Brother Mike says, thank you to NJAZ. I second that. I third that. Thank you to all of you guys for being here today also. And NJAZ says, this is Brother Mike said our head mods. NJAZ is the other one. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you. Okay, Pen Jam says, Bethany and Dylan must be getting really nervous. I would think so. And they've been stuck under this gag order. They've been stuck under the gag order. It looks like this got dropped for me a little bit ago. I did talk about the texting. So hopefully I've answered your question, but if I didn't, feel free to drop it in the comment section below and I will try to answer your questions. Thumbs up. Now you guys also can do Google searches if you want to see Bryan Kohberger's connections to the victims too. If law enforcement said he was separating his trash in the neighbor's trash, why didn't law enforcement get a match to his DNA from his trash? Well, maybe they didn't want to conflate. They may not have realized at the time what he was putting in the neighbor's trash can. I don't know. But with the IgG, they just needed a familial match. That's really all they needed. And so that's what they got. So that's a great question. I'm sure Ann Taylor will bring that out. But in my opinion, they just needed a familial match to get the probable cause, because that's not the DNA that the prosecution is presenting in court. They're not presenting the DNA that was collected out of the trash can that, showed familial link to Bryan Kohberger through his father, Michael. The prosecution is introducing a cheek swab, which was obtained with a judge's signature, with a warrant to get that cheek swab from Bryan Kohberger. And that cheek swab that he was taken after he was arrested, that is what is going to be matched to the DNA on the knife sheath in the not million, not billion, but 8 octillion range. And that is going to be very hard for Ann Taylor to overcome. But, she's a really good lawyer. She could do it. Do you think KB will testify in the trial? KB? I'm like trying to think of who KB is. I don't know who KB is. I probably do, but I'm not picking up on the KB. If you can. Did Ann Taylor explain his alibi? Not really, but you know, one thing I do want to do is I made a mistake when I was doing when I was looking up the weather a couple live streams ago, and I was looking up. I looked up November 13th, 2022, and for some reason I was looking up 2022. But I do think it's worth looking at what the weather was that night. So let's see. So November of 2022, we've got that. And then we're going to go to the day. So we're going to the 13th. I mistakenly clicked here and I clicked 22 again. So let's look at what the weather was on the night that he says. Let me make sure I'm not in the way. You guys can see it. You guys can see it. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm not in the way. Okay. So this, I do want to correct the record on this too. So you can see here that, so I think Ann Taylor's I think that you're going to see the prosecution put on some weather experts, and the defense team there. It was ice fog that night. Ice fog, overcast. So his alibi, and I think she had to put him in the car because of the cell phone pings, and maybe some CCTV camera footage that picked him up that clearly identifies that Hyundai Elantra as belonging to him, or has him in the car. So she had to put him in the car for some reason that we don't know yet. But you can see ice fog, overcast, ice fog, overcast, ice fog, ice fog. So this is the night he's supposed to be out seeing the moon and the stars. And I think the prosecution is going to have a field day with this, because they're going to be just looking at all of the ice fog and the overcast and what the weather was that night and be like, how could he be out seeing the sun and the moon and the stars in the fog and when it was overcast? So let me know what you think about that. But I did want to correct that, because when I pulled that up during the live stream the other day, I was typing in 2022, and then when I went to the next box, I checked 22 again. So my bad. Veronica said they took the neighbor's trash. I have not heard about that, but once it's trash, it's public domain. Right. You're right. Donald is right. It's considered abandoned. So Veronica, please tell me more about that, and I will look at it, and I will double check it for you guys and bring it to you on the next live stream. Hey, Christina. DE said, why was he looking out at the stars? Well, I don't think he could see the stars that night, but I do think that Ann Taylor had to put him in the car. I just don't see where she had a choice. I think she had to put him in the car. May says, I left other channels that made some unfounded, inappropriate guesses about the survivors. Not sure how anyone could bring accusations without proof that could be harmful to a survivor. I agree, Mace, and I think, I'm urging caution when it comes to Dylan and Bethany. I think, let's hear what they have to say. They've been stuck under a gag order. They've honored the gag order for 2 years. They've honored the gag order. They have not sold their story. They haven't written a book. They haven't spoken to the press. They haven't leaked anything to the press. So I agree with you, Mace. Florence thinks he looks like a predator. Lene says, I think Bryan Kohberger held Brett Kolpaka's knife. I did investigate Bryan Kohberger because he came up during the traffic stop, and because of what was going on. I have not found any links that show Bryan Kohberger had anything to do with this crime. If you have a reputable source that shows me something, please drop it in the comment section. You can, type in where you saw it in the comment section. Now, I want to just clarify what credible sourcing is. That's going to be somebody that fact checks and knows the identification of the person that's, leaking the information. So so not a speculation on a social, on Reddit wouldn't necessarily be considered a credible source. I just do want to give that caveat there. Brian says, I think it's unfair to cast any doubt on Dylan until we know all the facts. I agree. Veronica agrees. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to do a couple more questions, and then I'm going to be doing a Sebastian Rogers live stream expose. After this is done, I'm going to click out, and I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to click in, and we have to talk. I'll just say that. Christina said, why match his dad's DNA if they separated his trash? Wouldn't they match his DNA? Well, they did ultimately match his DNA. They did ultimately match it to the crime scene. That was the warrant they needed. But Ann Taylor has been conflating the IgG garbage trash DNA with the actual DNA that's being presented by the prosecution at the trial. And this has confused a lot of people. I'm not saying it's intentional. I don't know. She just might know the case so well. She doesn't mean it to be intentional. Some people feel like it is intentional on her part. I'm not saying whether it is, it isn't. But the prosecution is not presenting the garbage DNA. She wanted that thrown out because then she could get the probable cause warrants thrown out and she could try to suppress the evidence. 13 motions she filed to suppress evidence. So there is evidence in this case. So that's why she was talking about the IgG so much. The judge said that's nonsense. Bryan doesn't have standing to claim that some distant relative or ancestor. Just imagine if a distant relative of yours allegedly committed a crime, and then they made a rule that you're not allowed to upload your own DNA to a genealogy data site. Maybe you were adopted, or maybe you're not sure where your ancestors came from. Maybe there's some gaps you wanted to fill in. So it's, we just have to be really careful that, we're not suppressing other people's rights. Ann Taylor wanted to say that Bryan Kohberger had the right to tell a distant relative or ancestor that they were not allowed to upload their own DNA to the genealogy DNA website. And the judge said, no, if it was Bryan's DNA that he uploaded to the genealogy website, he might, not definitely yes, but he might have standing. But because it's a relative of Bryan Kohberger's that uploaded their DNA to a genealogy website, then he does not have the right to tell a distant relative or ancestor that they're not allowed to use these ancestry DNA type of places. So I hope I've answered your question. So thank you so much for your question, Christina. And just says they had to get a warrant to do his cheek swab because he wouldn't agree to one. And that's very telling. I think so too. I mean, if you really wanted to exonerate yourself, you would just offer your DNA. Yeah. And Ann Taylor wants his body searches, whatever that is. That's why I wanted to show you guys the cuts at the top of the video. She wants to take his body searches. She doesn't want those to be admitted. She doesn't want any statements that Bryan Kohberger has told law enforcement. She doesn't want those to be admitted. So what I'm wondering is if they locked him into a story of where he was on November 13th. And she doesn't want that to come in. So thank you to Enjaz, Brother Mike, and all of our mods for doing such a nice job, you guys. This is such a nice group. All right, let's see if we have any more questions. If I've missed your question or you have something else you think of, just drop it in the comment section below. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of research for you. I'll, answer it if it's something I can answer in 1 or 2 sentences. I had somebody ask me the other day, could I explain the entire case to them? And I'm like, not in the comment section below, but I was able to at least direct them where they could get some news articles. So I will try my best. I will try. Las Vegas Girl said, I believe his sisters know he is capable of this and suspected. Well, we've heard reports that his sisters did suspect him. The Snake River is long and swift. Thank you, Dog. It was nice to have you in the top chat today. DE says, imagine in all the old days if they had OJ's car driving all around. Yeah. Rhinestone said, I agree that his family knew he was capable of doing this. Mike believes his sister knew right away. DE thinks he's on camera. And just says, I feel very sorry for his family. They didn't ask for this. Raina says, I believe that the knife is in the Snake River. Very interesting. Well, we know he went down to that reservation, the Naz reservation, which is like acres and acres on to go shopping to an Albertsons when there's an affiliate of Albertsons right in Pullman. So why did he go all the way down to Clarkston to shop at the Albertsons all the way down there? And a lot of people feel like this is where he put the knife. Veronica says, I'm sure Jennifer told me that. I started reading the new documents and I believe it's in there. Oh, thank you so much for that, Veronica. That helps a lot. Michelle agrees with you. And Jaws Las Vegas Girl said, yes, I've been to Albertsons in Clarkston, Lewiston that VK went to. And there's a bridge that crosses the Snake River right by there. So a lot of people think that he was down there getting rid of the evidence. He could have buried it. He could have thrown it in the river. It would be, it's thousands of acres. It would be almost impossible to find it. Regina said, this is the worst case I have ever seen. JJ says, I think Dylan and Bethany were threatened by the perpetrator if they tell the truth. What makes you think that? I'm just curious. And Raina thinks the two roommates are traumatized. Mike agrees that they are. Vet Girl says, rhinestone so much for spell checker. I can relate to that. All right, you guys. Well, I have to get ready for the Sebastian Rogers live stream that I'm doing. JJ wants to know if he bought cleaning supplies at Albertsons. Well, we don't know, but we know that law enforcement got the CCTV camera of that car. So I'm sure that will be compared to the CCTV camera footage of the car on other videos. We don't know why he was all the way down in Clarkston that day, but we've speculated that it could have been to get rid of some of the evidence. He knew, in my opinion, allegedly, he's innocent until proven guilty, but he knew that he left that knife sheath behind, in my opinion. And that's why he went back that morning. Some people think it was to see what kind of circus he created. I think he wanted to find out about the knife sheath. And I think that Van's shoe print may link back up to one of those searches. That Van's shoe print that was outside of Dylan's door may link up to one of those law enforcement search warrants. So we'll see. We'll find out at the trial. Veronica said, yes, that was recent. And they said that was ruled out. DE thinks his eyebrows will be front and center. I think it'll be important. I don't know if it'll be, I don't know like how important it'll be, because I think there's a lot of other evidence, but we'll see. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up on your way in or on your way out. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I just, sorry. Let me just, I'm trying to, just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I'm trying to take my banner down. There it goes. Okay. I don't know why it wouldn't let me do that. I do want to say thank you to our producers. Thank you again to all of our channel members. If you would like your name to appear in all of my videos and live streams and get a check mark next to your name and join us for our members only live streams, just hit the join button. It's next to the subscribe button, but subscribing helps me a lot too. It's free. Subscribing is free and it helps me out a lot. And I ought to also say super sticker, thanks, and coffee gratitude. Thank you so much, you guys. And I'm going to be looking forward to purchasing a computer with that. Mine is whirling and making a rumbling noise. I don't know if you guys can hear it. You can hear I can literally hear the fans running in my computer. It's running so hard right now. So the new computer will definitely help me out a lot. Well, thank you for coming by to spend a little time with me. I'm going straight over to the Sebastian Rogers. So come and join me there and let's continue chit-chatting with each other. Come and hang out with me.